On my birthday, my husband and kids handed me divorce papers and stripped me of the life I built. Stay with me as I share what really happened, because this isn't just a story. It's the kind of betrayal that changes everything. I woke up that morning expecting at least a simple happy birthday from my family. For years, I had sacrificed sleep, comfort, and even my own dreams to make sure they had everything they wanted. I built a fashion company from the ground up, worked endless nights, and thought I was securing a future for all of us. I imagined we'd celebrate together, maybe have dinner, cut cake, laugh. But instead, they had planned something else entirely. When I walked into the dining room, the table was set as if there was going to be a celebration. Balloons, a cake, candles. My heart lifted for a moment. But the smiles on their faces weren't warm. They looked forced, almost rehearsed. Darius slid an envelope across the table toward me. "Happy birthday, Naomi," he said with a smirk. Inside were divorce papers. For a second, I thought it was a cruel joke. But it wasn't. My own children, Kendall and Avery, sat there watching, not saying a word. I looked at them, waiting for someone to explain, waiting for my kids to shout that it wasn't true. But instead, Kendall said, "Mom, this is for the best. You were never really here for us." His words cut deeper than the papers in my hand. Darius leaned back, enjoying every second of my confusion. He told me he had already handled everything. My mansion, my business, even the accounts I thought were safe. He said I'd signed documents over to him months ago, hidden in what I believed were routine filings. He manipulated me right under my nose. I couldn't breathe. The house I designed, the company I poured my soul into, the children I raised. Everything was taken from me in a single moment. Avery, my sweet 16-year-old, wouldn't even meet my eyes. Darius had poisoned their minds, telling them I only cared about money, that I had abandoned them for my career. And as much as I wanted to scream, to fight back, I just stood there frozen, my heart breaking in silence. That night, I sat alone in my car outside the mansion, staring at the glowing windows. Inside were the people I had lived for, now celebrating without me. I finally understood something cruel but true. The family I thought I had built was never really mine. I was just a stepping stone, a provider, someone to be used until they no longer needed me. And in that moment of pain, I made a quiet promise to myself. They thought they had ended me on my birthday. But this was just the beginning. Before all the betrayal, before the papers and the mansion being ripped away from me, there was a time when I was just a single mother with 2 small kids and nothing but the will to survive. I remember those nights like yesterday, working the late shift at a diner, then cleaning offices until sunrise, then squeezing in a few hours at a fabric store. My body ached constantly, my hands cracked from washing, but I did it so Kendall and Avery could eat, so they could have shoes for school, so they could sleep under a roof that didn't leak. There was no one else to lean on. It was just me. When the idea of starting a fashion company first came, people laughed. I was too broke, too tired, too ordinary. But I had always been good with my hands, sewing, stitching, creating. Little by little, I saved tips from waitressing, skipped meals just to afford fabric, and worked on designs while the kids slept. What began as a side hustle turned into something real. I would carry boxes of clothes in my beat-up car, selling to anyone who would listen. And slowly, customers returned, word spread, and my little dream began to take shape. It was around this time that Darius came into my life. He was charming, polished, and most of all, he looked at me like I was more than just a tired mother. He told me I was brilliant, that he believed in me when no one else did. After so many years of struggling alone, those words felt like water in a desert. I thought I had found my rock, someone who would help me carry the load. And for a while, it seemed that way. Darius started showing up at the shop, offering to run errands, handle the paperwork, talk to investors. He made it sound like he was just easing my burden. At first, it felt like love. I thought finally I had a partner who understood me. But slowly, he slipped deeper into the heart of the business, making decisions without asking, presenting himself as co-founder when he was never there in the beginning. I told myself not to worry, that he was just proud of us. But deep down, something felt off. Meanwhile, the kids were changing. Kendall, who once used to sit by my sewing machine, watching me work with wide eyes, started pulling away. Avery, who used to draw little designs beside mine, no longer wanted to show me her sketches. I noticed the distance, but I blamed myself. I told myself maybe I was working too hard. Maybe they just needed more of me. What I didn't know was that Darius was feeding them lies in the quiet moments when I wasn't around. He told them I cared more about money than family, that I loved the business more than I loved them. And when I look back now, I see the seeds he planted, small, sharp words that cut deeper over time. The cruelest part is remembering the nights I skipped sleep, the meals I gave up, the dreams I buried just to make sure my kids felt loved and secure. Yet in the end, all of that sacrifice was twisted into selfishness. It breaks me to know the story Darius told them erased the truth of everything I gave. The night I left the mansion for the last time, I didn't take much with me. Just a small suitcase with clothes and a folder of papers I thought might help me later. My own keys no longer worked, my accounts were frozen, and the security guards I had once hired on my own payroll wouldn't even let me step inside without Darius's approval. Everything I built, every brick, every piece of furniture, every dollar of value in that house was suddenly his. I remember sitting in my car outside the gates, staring at the lights of the home I once filled with love, and feeling like the ground had been pulled from under me. For weeks, I lived in a motel. The smell of stale smoke clung to the walls, and the noise of strangers arguing in the next room kept me awake at night. I counted every dollar carefully, wondering how long before even that ran out. The company that bore my vision and my name had been snatched away, and my children were gone too, choosing him over me. I had spent my life protecting them, and now they wouldn't even answer my calls. When the motel money thinned, I moved into a small apartment on the far edge of the city. The paint peeled off the walls, the sink leaked, and the space was so quiet it echoed. It was a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I would lie awake at night, replaying the betrayal over and over. I asked myself where I went wrong, what I did to deserve this, and why my own children believed the lies. Meanwhile, Darius was everywhere. Photos of him hosting parties at the mansion began surfacing online. He stood with Selena Price, a woman half my age, who had once worked under me at the company. I remembered the day I hired her, bright-eyed, eager to learn. Now she was draped over Darius's arm, wearing dresses I recognized from my own designs. Together they smiled for cameras, pretending they had built the empire I had sacrificed everything for. The worst part was seeing Kendall and Avery in those photos, standing beside their father and his new woman, looking comfortable, looking like I was already erased. Kendall posted about how grateful he was for real support in his life. Avery reposted photos with Selena, calling her the sweetest. It was a knife in my chest. I wanted to scream at them, to remind them of every night I stayed awake sewing while they slept, every birthday I scraped pennies together to buy gifts, every moment I chose them over myself. But they wouldn't hear me. Not now. I slipped into a darkness I didn't recognize. Some days I didn't want to get out of bed. I stopped eating, stopped caring, stopped looking in the mirror because I couldn't bear the reflection of someone so discarded. But somewhere in that silence, a small fire sparked. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let Darius rewrite my story as if I had never mattered. Even as I sat in that small, broken apartment, I whispered to myself, "This is not the end. Not for me." One evening, when the loneliness in my small apartment felt unbearable, I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at a name I hadn't seen in years, Talia Green. We had grown up together, two girls with big dreams and no money, always promising each other that one day we'd make it out of the struggle. Life had pulled us apart, but she had become everything she said she would, a respected lawyer with her own firm. I hesitated, wondering if she would even remember me the same way, but desperation pushed me to call. When she answered, her voice carried the same warmth it always had. I broke down before I could even explain. Within hours, she was at my apartment with takeout and wine, sitting across from me as I poured out everything. My birthday, the papers, the mansion, the kids, Selena. She didn't flinch, didn't pity me, just listened carefully like she was already building a case in her mind. The next day, she came back with a stack of documents I had signed over the years. She spread them across my tiny kitchen table and pointed to one particular filing. "Naomi, this isn't just routine paperwork. This is power of attorney. You signed over the right for Darius to act in your name." My stomach turned as I read the lines, the words I had glanced at quickly before trusting him to handle it. I remembered the moment. He had slid the papers to me in the middle of a hectic workday, telling me it was just a routine update for the company. I had trusted him, and with that trust, I had handed him the keys to everything I owned. As if that wasn't enough, Talia dug deeper. With a grim look, she showed me photos, messages, and timelines that revealed the truth I had been too blind to see. Darius and Selena hadn't just started their affair after my company grew. They had been together for years, building their plot in the shadows while I was too busy working to notice. The betrayal wasn't sudden. It was a slow, deliberate theft of my life. For the first time since it all happened, I didn't cry. The grief that had drowned me began to dry up, replaced by something sharper, something hotter, rage. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar I earned had been twisted into their weapon against me. They thought I was broken, that I would stay down while they paraded my company and my children around like trophies. Talia reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Naomi, you're not alone anymore. We're going to fight this. Legally, financially, emotionally, we're going to make them regret every move they made." That night, I stared at the peeling ceiling of my apartment and made a vow. I would not just rebuild. I would rise higher than they ever expected. And when the time was right, I would destroy the illusion of power Darius and Selena thought they had stolen from me. This wasn't grief anymore. This was war. I took a job at a small boutique on the other side of town, folding shirts and greeting customers. And for the first time in months, I felt the sting of starting over. The boutique was nothing like the offices and studios I used to run. It smelled of detergent and fresh cotton, and the owner, Mrs. Kiani, gave me cheap coffee and honest smiles. I kept my head down at work, quiet about the past, but every stitch I helped fold and every customer I advised reminded me of what I could still do. It was humble, but it kept me close to fabrics, to design, and to the rhythm that had always steadied me. While I worked, I also worked a different way, in secret. I reached out to old contacts who had once believed in me. There were people I had helped without thinking twice, interns I had mentored, and suppliers who remembered that my word meant something. I met them for lunch, exchanged messages, and slowly built a small network of allies who still admired my integrity. They didn't ask for anything. They wanted to see me rise again. Their quiet faith felt like armor. Talia continued to be my anchor. She moved with purpose, discreetly tracing transactions and digging into company records. Each piece of evidence she found was a small victory. An unusual transfer here, a forged initial there, a contract altered to shift ownership. She showed me emails where Darius had signed off on deals without my knowledge, and bank statements where funds disappeared into accounts with names I'd never heard. It hurt to see the proof, but it also lit a fire. The truth was out, and it meant I could fight back. At night, after my shift, I sat at the small kitchen table in my apartment and sketched. I bought cheap sketchbooks and sewed prototypes on an old machine I kept hidden. This new line would be different. Not the brand that carried my name and history, but something raw, bold, and honest. I used simple materials at first, designing pieces that spoke to resilience. Structured jackets with hidden pockets, dresses that moved like water, shirts with bold seams that refused to hide the scars. I kept it off the grid, selling only a few samples to friends and trusted customers who promised not to mention a name. Every small purchase, every compliment, was a grain of confidence returning to me. I learned to find joy in the tiny wins. A boutique owner who ordered 5 pieces, an influencer who messaged to say she loved the fabric and silhouette, an old investor who quietly asked to meet. These moments stitched me back together. My pain did not disappear, but it sharpened into cold determination. I no longer wanted revenge out of anger. I wanted justice and proof that I could build again from nothing. Some nights I still woke up imagining the mansion lit up with laughter and my children inside, unaware I was breathing a new life. But each morning I returned to the boutique, to the sewing machine, to the stack of papers Talia left on my table with new leads. I was preparing quietly, patiently, for a comeback that would not be loud or reckless. It would be precise, inevitable, and entirely mine. From the outside, it looked like Darius and Selena were living the dream. They hosted lavish dinners in the mansion, posed for photographs at charity events, and acted like the company was thriving under their rule. But the cracks began to show faster than even I expected. The designs they released were sloppy, rushed imitations of what I once created. The fabrics were cheaper, the stitching loose, the vision gone. Clients who had trusted me for years started whispering about the sudden decline in quality. Orders were delayed, investors weren't paid on time, and slowly the sparkle of their empire began to dim. Selena, with her hunger for luxury, pushed Darius into spending more than the company could carry. She wore the most expensive jewelry, threw parties with champagne flowing like water, and paraded around as if she had built the foundation herself. The more she flaunted, the weaker the company grew. Even loyal staff members started to resign, unable to tolerate the chaos. I heard through quiet channels that meetings were heated, suppliers were walking away, and more than one board member was considering pulling out. Meanwhile, my children were not blind to the changes. Kendall, once so quick to dismiss me, began noticing the emptiness where I used to be. He might not admit it, but I could see it in his eyes when he passed me at community events. The boy who used to help me carry rolls of fabric into the shop now stood in his father's shadow, trying to act proud but looking uncertain. Avery, too, began to struggle. She never said a word to me, but I heard she cried after Darius introduced Selena at a party as part of the family. My daughter, only 16, watched another woman take my place at the table where I once sat. The community also began to murmur. Old clients spoke of unpaid debts, investors whispered of missing funds, and neighbors raised eyebrows at the constant noise of parties that seemed more desperate than celebratory. The image of success that Darius and Selena tried to paint was cracking like thin glass, and beneath it was the mess of greed and fraud. I kept my distance. I didn't call, didn't argue, didn't even try to defend myself. Let them believe I had disappeared into nothing. Let them think I was broken beyond repair. In reality, I was watching everything closely, every rumor, every stumble, every sign of weakness. Talia kept feeding me information, and I documented it all, piece by piece, like a hawk circling quietly above its prey. There were moments I wanted to act right away, to rush in and tear down the facade they built with my blood and sweat. But patience became my weapon. Every empire that rises on lies will eventually collapse under its own weight. And when theirs finally did, I would be ready to strike. Not with noise or desperation, but with precision that would leave them no chance to recover. I launched my new brand without any grand announcement, no flashing lights, no mansion parties. Just a simple online release with a small collection. Pieces made from the sketches I poured my soul into during those long nights at the apartment. At first, I expected only a few sales, friends of friends, maybe someone curious enough to try. But within a week, the orders doubled, then tripled. Customers weren't just buying, they were talking. They shared photos, wrote reviews about how my designs felt personal, how the clothes carried a strength they hadn't found anywhere else. What started as a quiet whisper became a rising wave. People said my line had something Darius's company no longer did, authenticity. My designs carried the story of survival, of resilience, and somehow customers felt it. The boutique where I still worked agreed to display a few pieces, and they sold out in days. Word spread from there, and soon I had to stay up all night sewing to keep up with demand. My tiny apartment turned into a war room. The kitchen table was stacked with fabric, sketches lined the walls, and the hum of my sewing machine filled the air like a heartbeat. Every stitch I made felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Darius, of course, dismissed it. He laughed when he first heard I had started again, telling people I was just playing dressmaker in some cramped little room. He called me irrelevant, washed up, finished. But when investors started pulling out of his company and reaching out to me quietly, his laughter faded. Old partners who once trusted me remembered my honesty, my vision, my work ethic. They saw the fire returning, and they wanted to be part of it. I didn't have the mansion anymore, but I didn't need it. That small apartment, with its peeling paint and squeaky floors, became the heart of my rebirth. Every morning, I woke up to the sight of fabric rolls stacked by the door, notebooks filled with orders, and my own determination staring back at me in the mirror. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was built from nothing, again, just like the first time, but this time I was wiser. Soon, articles started appearing online about the return of Naomi Ellison. Bloggers called me the Phoenix brand, rising from ashes stronger than before. Customers lined up not just for clothes, but for the story behind them. I was no longer the forgotten mother cast aside. I was the woman who refused to die quietly. With every order shipped, every investor call, and every new design, I felt my reputation returning. But more importantly, I felt my independence growing stronger. They had stripped me of everything once, but here I was building again, not for them, not even for revenge alone, but for me. My name, my work, my life. This was the true beginning of my comeback, and I knew it was only the start of something far greater. Kendall scrolled through her phone one night, lying in the oversized bedroom of the mansion that no longer felt like home. Her father's laughter echoed from the living room where Selena hosted yet another celebration. Kendall muted the noise by diving into social media and froze. A post from a popular fashion blogger flashed across her screen. The bold new line by Naomi Hart is everything the industry needs right now. Raw, authentic, powerful. Her heart stuttered. Mom. She clicked through pictures, dresses stitched with elegance, blouses carrying Naomi's signature cuts, the kind Kendall had grown up watching her design. Tears pricked her eyes as a memory hit. Naomi sketching late at night, telling Kendall, "Design isn't about money, it's about truth." She swallowed hard. For the first time in months, Kendall missed her mother, not just as a parent, but as the visionary she once admired. Meanwhile, Avery lingered outside his father's study one afternoon, drawn by the raised voices. Darius was pacing, phone pressed to his ear. "Don't compare Naomi to me," he barked. "She's irrelevant. A ghost. I made that company what it is. She's nothing without me." He hung up, muttering curses under his breath. Avery stood frozen. The venom in Darius's voice wasn't just anger, it was fear. Fear of Naomi. Later that night, Avery sat quietly during dinner as Darius bragged about expansion plans and Selena chimed in about luxury marketing strategies. The hollowness of their words scratched at him. Naomi had never spoken like that. She used to tell him, a brand should serve people, not swallow them. He realized he hadn't just lost his mother. He'd lost the values she lived by. Naomi, on her end, stayed silent. She didn't chase. She didn't beg. She poured herself into her work, releasing pieces that spoke louder than any argument. Her small apartment transformed into a buzzing hub. Samples on the bed, fabric rolls in the kitchen, her laptop glowing late into the night. Word spread like wildfire, and slowly, her children began to notice. Kendall took the first step. She showed up at Naomi's apartment one weekend, hesitant, clutching a tote bag. I wanted to see your line in person," she whispered. Naomi's eyes softened, but she didn't push. She simply opened the door and said, "Come in." Kendall wandered through racks of designs, running her fingers over the fabrics. "This is you," she said, voice breaking. Naomi didn't reply with bitterness. She only smiled gently. "It's who I've always been." Avery followed weeks later, after another heated argument with Darius. He didn't announce his visit, just appeared at Naomi's door, awkward and restless. "I don't know what to believe anymore," he admitted. Naomi placed a hand on his shoulder, steady but careful. "You don't have to choose sides right now," she said. "Just choose what feels true." The cracks in Darius's empire were mirrored in his children's hearts. Slowly, quietly, Naomi was winning them back, not with pleas, but with proof of who she truly was. Trust would take time, but for the first time since the betrayal, hope flickered between mother and children. The courtroom buzzed with tension, the kind that hangs heavy before a storm breaks. Naomi sat at the plaintiff's table, her chin lifted, her face composed, though her heart pounded beneath her blazer. Beside her, Talia Green shuffled through files, eyes sharp with the quiet fire of a lawyer who knew she had the winning hand. Across the aisle, Darius lounged in his chair with the arrogance of a man who thought charm could outmaneuver justice. Selena sat next to him, perfectly styled but restless, her manicured fingers tapping against her phone. Naomi caught the flicker in her eyes, panic disguised as boredom. When the judge entered, silence fell. Talia rose first. "Your Honor," she began, voice crisp, "we present undeniable evidence that Mr. Darius Hart engaged in fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. These are not accusations. They are documented truths." On the screen behind her, documents flashed one by one. Power of attorney forms, signed not in Naomi's hand, but a forgery. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, funneled without authorization. Receipts from lavish parties paid for with company funds. Each revelation was a dagger, and Darius's smirk thinned until it vanished altogether. Naomi kept her eyes fixed forward, refusing to let him see her satisfaction. She remembered the nights she cried in that motel, the days she felt stripped of worth. Now, in this room, the truth wrapped itself around her like armor. The breaking point came when Talia called an expert witness, a handwriting analyst. Side by side, Naomi's real signature and Darius's forgery glowed on the screen. The differences were undeniable. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Selena's face drained of color. She leaned toward Darius, whispering furiously, but he shrugged her off, sweat beading at his temple. When it was his turn to speak, his voice cracked beneath the weight of exposure. "This is a setup," he spat. "Naomi's bitter. She wants revenge." But the evidence drowned his words. Numbers don't lie. Signatures don't morph. Greed cannot be hidden forever. By the second day, Selena was gone, her seat beside him empty, her loyalty evaporating as soon as the money dried up. Naomi almost pitied her, but then she remembered the smirk Selena wore while parading through her old mansion. The pity dissolved into cold resolve. Kendall and Avery sat in the gallery, their faces pale. They had defended their father once, blinded by his charisma, but now they saw the rot beneath the charm. Kendall wiped her eyes, Avery clenched his fists. Naomi felt their gaze on her, not in accusation this time, but in quiet acknowledgement. When the verdict came, it was swift and brutal. Guilty. Darius was stripped of the company, the mansion, and the fortune he had built on lies. His reputation, once polished and admired, was shattered, reduced to headlines dripping with scandal. Naomi walked out of the courthouse not as the woman he tried to destroy, but as the woman who outlasted him. For every piece he stripped from her, she had taken back tenfold. This time, the fall was his, and there would be no rising from it. The papers were hers again. After months of legal battles, Naomi now had the full rights to her company restored. Yet when the court clerk placed the documents in her hands, she felt no urge to reclaim what was once stolen. She smiled faintly, slid the folder across to Talia, and whispered, "I don't need it anymore. Let him keep the ashes. My fire is already burning somewhere else." Her new brand had blossomed beyond what she ever imagined. Orders poured in, her designs gracing storefronts and social feeds with authenticity no forged signature could ever replicate. Every stitch carried her story of survival, and people connected with it. The name Naomi Ellison no longer needed the mansion, the old company, or even the approval of a corrupted family. It stood on its own, unshakable. Kendall came to her first. He knocked on her apartment door one evening, his tall frame awkward in the hallway, his eyes red-rimmed. "Mom, I was wrong," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of shame. "I believed him. I turned my back on you. I don't deserve forgiveness." Naomi's chest tightened, but she didn't crumble. She pulled him into a hug, her hand pressing the back of his neck like she used to when he was little. "You're my son," she murmured. "You'll always have my forgiveness. But trust that we rebuild slowly." Avery followed days later. She clutched Naomi's hands in both of hers, tears streaking her cheeks. "I heard him laugh at you, Mom. I heard him call you names. I hated him in that moment, but I was too scared to stand with you." Naomi kissed her forehead. "You don't have to hate anyone, baby. Just learn. Never again let someone twist your love into a weapon." The reconciliation was tender but cautious. Naomi refused to lose herself in motherhood defined by guilt. She had boundaries now, walls built not to keep her children out, but to keep herself whole. Meanwhile, Darius was nowhere. The man who once threw parties in her mansion now rented a dingy room on the edge of town. Selena was gone, the investors gone, even his own children avoiding him. He was a ghost of the man who once strutted across stages, his phone calls unanswered, his name spit out in disgust. Naomi didn't celebrate his ruin. She simply didn't think of him at all. His chapter in her life was closed. One crisp morning, she carried boxes into her new home. It wasn't grand. No marble floors, no chandeliers. Just sunlight pouring through wide windows, walls painted in soft tones, and enough space for a studio where bolts of fabric leaned against the wall like old friends. She stood in the center of that studio, the hum of the sewing machine waiting to be switched on, and whispered to herself, "They thought they ended me on my birthday. But that was the day I was reborn." And for the first time in years, Naomi felt completely, unapologetically free. Do you believe Naomi made the right choice by closing the door on her old life and starting fresh? Or should she have tried to rebuild what was broken with her family? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear what you think. And if stories like this resonate with you, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another one.